right. I'm Stephen Willis alongside the Hammer from Biscuits and SEC, and we talk about SEC football games for the upcoming week every Thursday night at about 8 o'clock. So thank you very much for tuning in. Also, you can catch my other stuff on Locked On Ole Miss, and we have a lot of stuff at Biscuits and SEC. You can check out their content as well. We got some interesting games, Hammer, coming up this weekend, and I think this is like a separation Saturday type deal. And the SEC can completely reshuffle and be completely different than we thought it was going to be, or it can be the same old, same old. I mean, everything in between is possible, but this just feels like an interesting separation type of weekend.
I totally agree. I think this is really the first weekend where you're going to see, as you mentioned, teams – I won't say pull away from the pack because there's a long way to go, but they will put themselves in the driver's seat, right? With A&M Alabama, whoever wins that game, I think would be in the driver's seat for the West, in particular Alabama, because they've already beaten Ole Miss, where A&M still has to travel there later in the year. LSU, Missouri's undefeated. LSU has one conference loss. So that could be a very big swing game where LSU is kind of either knocked out of contention or still clinging on for dear life. And then Kentucky, Georgia, of course, both teams unbeaten. And you would assume, that Georgia still has a stranglehold on the East, but maybe they don't. Maybe Kentucky can give them a game. So I think we're going to learn a lot this weekend, and I can't wait for the games.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially this first game that we're going to talk about. LSU is going up to Mizzou. LSU's defense is as bad as I've seen an LSU defense in probably since 2020 when Mississippi State dropped about 700 yards passing on them. And I think they can get a little bit fixed at the line of scrimmage. They do kind of some CFL where you start from a yard off the ball, and that has given LSU some problems, I think. But the reality of the situation is Missouri can do a lot of the same stuff Ole Miss did to them. And they have Luther Burden, and they have Brady Cook, who is the all-time SEC leader in consecutive passes without an interception. And there's weapons on the outside. LSU has transfers from like Southeast Louisiana and Nicholls State and those guys on the back end of the jersey. I think this has a chance to be another shootout because as good as that LSU offense is, if Missouri can move the ball and score the football, Missouri's going to win this game if they can.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is the worst defense we've seen from LSU since 2020, possibly years before that. Because, look, LSU, well, first of all, they claim to be DBU. So this is certainly a down year on the back end for them. And to their credit, they have put
they're like DBCC.
Yeah.
Defensive back community college.
Right. Well, that's kind of what they look like now. Certainly in years past, they put plenty of talented defensive guys on the back end into the NFL. But at the moment, they're really struggling. And I fully expect Missouri to take advantage of it. Look, we just saw back-to-back weeks, you saw Ole Miss's offense against Alabama. Granted, it was in Bryant-Denny, very different environment. I also thought Lane Kiffin had a much better plan for LSU, but a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that he was playing LSU and not Bama, and it's a lot easier to get guys open against LSU than it is Alabama. So
I think Bama's just in his head.
I think a little bit of that too. It seemed I just thought he had a much better plan. They were taking shots, and it was clear that they knew how to get open against LSU. And I think Missouri will be able to do that too. You mentioned Brady Cook hasn't thrown an interception this year. He's just broken the record for pass attempts without an interception in the SEC. And hand up on that, we over at Biscuits and SEC, myself included, last year especially, were pretty critical of Brady Cook coming into this year. I was surprised he got this, kept the starting job. I didn't really like what I had seen from him, and he has completely proven me and many other haters wrong. So I think they're going to be able to move the ball. of course, through the air with Cook and Burden. I'm interested to see the point you brought up early is the LSU front seven, because I don't think the issues on the back end are fixable. Certainly they can improve slightly over the course of the year, but I think we're just looking at a secondary that is not going to get very good. And they're going to be susceptible to big plays. So the key to me in this game is, can the LSU front seven cover that up a little bit? I mean, you look around the league, A&M, for instance, got torched by Miami. Their front seven in their last couple games has really stepped up and covered up, I think, what is still a iffy secondary. And, the quarterbacks just haven't had time or haven't had the composure in the pocket with all that going on to take advantage of that. So if you're LSU, I think that's what you have to do. Bring pressure, push those guys on the front seven to make Brady Cook uncomfortable and get him to the point where even if there are guys running open in the secondary, he doesn't have time to hit them. He's not seeing them. Get him in the Sam Darnold seeing ghosts phase of the game and just hope that can hide your secondary, because I don't think they have the guys back there to hang with the Missouri weapons.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know if they do either. Missouri, for a team that was so, I guess, meh 2 years ago, Missouri's got consistently better and better. And I do not know if Missouri is ready for primetime. This is a situation where LSU could win this game by 3 touchdowns, and nobody would be surprised by that as well. Nobody would be surprised if Missouri won the football game. I think it's going to be interesting. It's just probably good for Missouri to be in a game like this.
Yeah, I think, I really don't know what to think about it, because I look at, of course, on paper, I think LSU still has more talent. And they also were in a very similar situation last year, right? They lost the opener to FSU, and then they lost an early conference game to Tennessee. Of course, ended up winning the SEC West. So I don't think you're going to see an LSU team that has given up or is lost. I think they're going to come and play pretty well. It's just a matter of how good even really are they, especially on the road at, an 11 a.m. local time start in Columbia. When I was working on our previews for Biscuits and SEC.com, I did end up picking LSU. I think, in a shootout. I just think Jaden Daniels is playing very well. I think LSU is going to be able to move the ball, and with them being in wounded animal mode, backs against the wall, I think they're going to come away with a win. But as you said, I would not be surprised at all to see Mizzou win this. And honestly, for the SEC as a whole, I think that would be a great storyline. Get somebody else in the East like Missouri, a seat at the table, let them keep winning games and proving people wrong. I think that would be a fun storyline, but I do think LSU will squeak this out, 41-38, something like that.
Alabama is at Texas A&M. There was a hoax going around that Jalen Milroe had hurt his hamstring. Apparently that is not true. But the line did go down from, I think it opened at around 6, and it's down to about 1 point now. And It was a situation, once it got down to 2 or 3, I was like, hey, the wrong team is kind of favored right here. Max Johnson does what he does. Texas A&M's front seven, if they can hold up against the run and force Jalen Milroe to throw the passes, do not give up explosive plays, I think Texas A&M's in a position to win this football game.
I think so too, and it scares me to death because A&M has broken my heart a million times over. But coming into this game, a lot of things are in A&M's favor, right? Of course, it's at Kyle Field, so it's a home game. But you look at what A&M does well, especially on defense, they get after the quarterback and they stop the run. Alabama wants to run the ball. They're not great throwing the ball, especially in the intermediate game. And they, I don't trust Jalen Milroe and the Alabama skill position players based on what we've seen to sit in the pocket and pick apart a defense. So that matchup to me plays very much into A&M's hands to be able to limit what Alabama can do offensively. And then the A&M offense has been pretty consistently good this year. I don't think they've been great. They certainly could clean up some mistakes, but Petrino's calling a pretty good game. He's giving defenses different looks. And like you said, Max Johnson is, I think you know what you're going to get with him, right? I mean, he's not a Heisman Trophy winner, but he's also not going to go out there and lose you the football game. So I think this is going to be a four-quarter, really competitive game. But I'm definitely leaning towards A&M. And like I said, that certainly scares me.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Now, Connor Wegman, or Wegman, however it's pronounced, good quarterback. He won the job fair and square. But this is a situation to where I wonder if being the ball distributor that Max Johnson is actually an advantage in games like this. This particular game, Max Johnson is a better fit for what they're going to try and do than Connor Wegman.
Yeah, it could be. I think to me, this kind of comes down to what A&M's offensive line can do, because I think Bama's defense is extremely good, probably the best defense A&M will see all season. And Max Johnson, when given time, as you just said, he is a great distributor of the ball. He is experienced and poised enough to sit in the pocket and work through his reads when given time. However, he also has a tendency, if there's pressure on him, to get a little deer in the headlights. We've certainly seen that over the years, where he's kind of unsure what to do with the ball. He holds it too long. So he needs to get comfortable, and they need some early plays. And if I was A&M, I would take a shot early. Or multiple, try to not just get him in rhythm and get him some easy throws. Of course, you always want to do that, but really get the crowd going and try to hit a deep shot early and just send a message that, hey, we're not going to try and, win this game 17-10, right? We are coming to score points and try to win. Easier said than done, but I think Petrino has enough gumption to do that. I hope he tries it, but I think that's something to look out for, is how aggressive A&M is early in the game to try and just set that tone and get an early lead.
I think if this game gets into the upper 20s, that's advantage A&M at that point. I think Alabama's best hope for this game is to win a 17-10 type game. I think that is going to be the level where Alabama can be the best example of. So early, a quick start in this game. Let's say Bobby Petrino has some stuff dialed up in his script and he goes forward and gets straight down the field. They score a touchdown. They kick a field goal. It's like 10-3 at the end of the first quarter. To me, that's advantage Texas A&M, because Auburn, I am terribly sorry, Alabama fans. Alabama is not equipped to play comeback. And if this game gets to where they're down by 2 scores, it's kind of Katie bar the door, in my opinion.
Exactly. I think you're right. I mean, look, we've seen what Tommy Rees and Alabama want to do with Milroe at quarterback, and that is run the ball and utilize the quarterback run. And they really, he threw 12 passes last week, I believe, against Mississippi State. So if they can beat you running the ball, that's what they're going to do. But if they get behind early and they're forced to throw, I think that really plays into A&M's hands. And looking at some of the comments here from Rick, I think he kind of nailed it. If Bama doesn't turn the ball over, they can win. I think the turnovers in this game are going to be key, because look, last week, Max Johnson against Arkansas had 3 turnovers. I don't think you can do that against Alabama and win. And Milroe, especially on the road, I think it could be in a position where he's going to turn the ball over. Again, especially if they get down and he's forced to throw the ball, or if A&M is in his face and getting pressure. So I really think it's going to come down. It's going to be an evenly matched game. The talent on the field between the two teams, I think, is pretty even, and they're going to be able to match up with one another well. So it's just a matter of who makes the costly mistake and, where the costly mistake happens, right? Is it a red zone pick, or is it a pick deep in your own territory? territory that really takes points off the board or kind of hands points to the other team. But look, like I said, I'm an A&M fan, so I'm certainly a homer and drinking the Kool-Aid. I think A&M will pull this one out 27-24, something like that. But we'll see. It's going to be, I think, a knockdown, drag-out, four-quarter fight, whoever comes out on top.
All I know is I'll be glued to CBS watching this game one way or another, because as an Ole Miss fan, as you can see in the background, I'm hoping A&M wins this game as well, because Ole Miss does not have the tiebreaker currently with Alabama. And a Texas A&M win is basically like, hey, let's throw all the names in the hat and start over. And
yeah, I mean, look, exactly. If A&M wins, A&M might be in the driver's seat with Ole Miss riding shotgun for the SEC West, heading for the clash in Oxford. If Bama wins, well, then we're both in trouble, because we got to have Bama lose twice, which is not an easy thing.
Yeah, it is definitely not an easy thing. Now, the third game on this separation Saturday is Kentucky at Georgia. And this is a game that I think about. This is the game that normally you play Georgia, you think Kentucky has a chance. Georgia wins the game 30-3. It's over. They slam the door. They're the number one team in the country. This Georgia team feels different, though.
Yeah. Look, Auburn is a different team at Jordan-Hare. That's a fact. However, they're still not a good team. And the fact that they took Georgia to the brink, really still without a passing game, that's what surprised me the most, was seeing Auburn's offense against A&M and seeing them against Georgia. It didn't look that different, other than they were able to get more yardage on the ground against Georgia. They still couldn't throw the ball. So that's what really surprised me. And I think you're right. Look, Georgia, of course, talent-wise, still has all the talent in the world, and it's going to be interesting to see how much better they can get throughout the year. But as it currently stands, they're not the same Georgia. Their offense is struggling to run the ball. Of course, they have Brock Bowers, and I think Beck has been fine. He's no Stetson Bennett, as crazy as that is to say, but
absolutely not.
He's certainly not the problem, right? I think he's been playing good enough, but they just don't look nearly as in rhythm. And I think that starts with the kind of lack of run game. They just can't really get ahead of the chains like they're used to doing. And again, defensively, I mean, they gave up a lot more on the ground to Auburn than I thought they would against what's a completely one-dimensional Auburn team.
Yeah, with this being a Kirby team, you expect that Georgia team to stop the run with whoever they're playing. The only way that a team runs the ball on them is maybe it's Alabama, in the SEC championship game. That's what you're expecting from Kirby. Auburn just lined up in the I formation, handed the ball off to Jarquez Hunter, and went straight down the field on him. And if they were playing anybody that could throw a forward pass, they would have lost that football game.
Yeah, they would have. And that is, I think, what this matchup comes down to, because Kentucky wants to run the ball. Clearly, they ran all over Florida. I don't expect Ray Davis to have a repeat performance against Georgia on the road, right? I think Kirby and their defense will have a far better plan than what the Gators had, and they'll just execute better. I mean, some of the run fits that Florida defense was putting together were pitiful. So, this weekend, I think that's what it comes down to, because if Georgia can stop the run and they can hold Ray Davis under wraps and make Devin Leary beat them, I think they'll be in a good position. Now, Leary is capable, but he's been inconsistent this year, right? So if he has the luxury of having a run game and they can use play action to distract the Georgia secondary and the Georgia linebackers, then I think he can be very effective. If they can't run the ball and it kind of all gets put on Leary's shoulders, I don't know if he's ready for this kind of moment and to carry the Kentucky team on his back. So I think that's really the key here. I think Georgia offensively will probably score in the 20s, right? I mean, I think Kentucky has a good defense, but, Georgia's decent enough offensively to get some points. So to me, it really just comes down to how the Georgia defense can bottle up Ray Davis if they can, and then, basically just dare Devin Leary to beat you in his first major SEC road game. He's very experienced, but he hasn't been to Sanford Stadium before. So that's what I would do if I was the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's just an interesting situation. Kentucky, you think, might have the weapons. I think Barry and Brown has a chance to be an X factor type player in this football game. Devin Leary obviously stands out. And defensively, if Kentucky's defense can bow up and hold that Georgia offense to 13 to 17 points, I think Kentucky has a really good chance to win this game. The 30 to 31 to nothing, the 30 to threes, Georgia, that being in this situation before, that doesn't get out of my head. Although I'm not taking Georgia to cover in any game moving till the end of the season until they actually do it.
Exactly. I'm with you. I'm not taking Georgia to cover. I do think they win, but honestly, I think this game is going to play out pretty similar to how their last couple of SEC games have, right? I don't really expect them to start super fast. I think they're going to ease their way into the game. It's probably going to be tied or close to it at half. And you're going to look up in the fourth quarter and it's going to be a one-score game. And, Georgia's going to score, let's say, midway through the fourth quarter and sort of put a bow on the game. I think they win 24-16, something like that, 27-16, where it's a hard-fought, competitive four-quarter game that's really close until, Georgia just kind of gets one more score, and the Kentucky offense, it's going to be tough sledding. So I think that's the way I see it going, but I'm with you. I certainly would not pick Georgia to cover. But at the same time, they, when you're talking about a straight up win or loss, Georgia hasn't lost since, I don't know, the SEC championship game 2 years ago. So it's hard to pick against them winning outright at this point.
Yeah, I think Georgia will be fine. Much like this next game that we're going to talk about technically a storyline. I think Georgia wins the game. They don't cover. And that's just kind of the identity of the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah, you have a situation to where if Georgia comes out and plays with their food the way they did with the Auburn Tigers, they will lose this football game. I don't think necessarily they will do that. And we'll see exactly what happens. Now, moving on to the other storylines, America's favorite drunk uncle of the college football game is this weekend with the Ole Miss Rebels and the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is a game that if Ole Miss plays its best and Arkansas plays its best, Ole Miss wins the game. But I do not expect Ole Miss to cover in this game. I'm taking it like Ole Miss 45, Arkansas 35.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think on our previews, I had Ole Miss 38, Arkansas 28. I think, look, at the end of the day, I think Arkansas, because they have KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, against most teams, they're going to be able to move the ball and they're going to be able to put up a decent number of points. I just don't think overall they're that good of a team. And I think, look, it's in Oxford. Ole Miss is at home. We just saw them win a crazy emotional game there. And I think Ole Miss's front seven is going to be able to get after them. Arkansas offensive line is not good. Trust me. We all saw what A&M did to them. A&M has a great front, but there's a lot there that, a better defensive front a better offensive line could have prevented. They don't have the guys right now on offense. And I don't think they have the guys on defense either to hold Ole Miss and Jackson Dart in that attack under wraps. And look, A&M struggled to run the ball most of the year. They ran the ball in Arkansas. So I'm sure if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss and Quinshon Judkins, who's also had a good week last week, but that was really the first time that they got going. I have to imagine they are licking their chops, looking at this matchup and thinking that they can they can get after it in the ground game, which is something they want to do. So I do like Ole Miss here. But to your point, drunk uncle game, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be very fun. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff, big plays. So I'll definitely be watching this one.
And everybody watch this, because you'll get to see Mississippi State potentially win a football game. That is not something that is going to happen very often this season. They play Western Michigan. They run essentially a Wildcat offense. I expect Mississippi State to cover the 20 points pretty easily.
Agree. This is a first-year head coach who's struggling run up the score type of game because Zach Arnett needs some good news. So I think they're going to just, physically outman Western Michigan and cruise to a victory. And to your point, I would expect them to cover because, look, coaches say they don't look at the spreads. I think they do. And he is going to want to cover this football game.
Yeah, because
so one way or the other, whether it's a blowout early or not, he's going to cover.
Yeah, he's staring 0-8 in the SEC dead in the eyes.
Yes, I totally agree. So, yeah, like you said, if you can get a win, get it and get it big so that you at least get one happy week in Starkville.
Yeah, and I am not ready to pick them yet to beat Southern Miss. They're better than Southern Miss, but there's a lot of football to be played, and they could be coming into that game 3-7. And what Mississippi State team is going to look like at 3-7. So that is interesting. And honestly, I can't remember what the other game is.
The other game this week, let's see. We got Florida, Vandy.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Hosting Vandy. Yeah. I don't think Vanderbilt's any good. I don't think Florida is either, but they're in the swamp. I think
it's a revenge game for the Gators. Vandy.
It is. I mentioned that. Yeah, look, if you're Billy Napier, similar to what we just said about Zach Arnett, he's in year 2, but he's got a lot of people mad at him. He's 0-1 against Vanderbilt as the head coach of Florida, which is unacceptable. So I think they're going to win. But, look, I will not be glued to this game. I don't think either one of these teams are particularly good, but I do like Florida in this matchup.
Yeah, back in the day, this is probably before your time when A&M wasn't in the conference. We had the Jefferson Pilot game of the week, and that happened. That was at like at 11:30 every Saturday morning. That was before 11 o'clock games were really a thing, and Vanderbilt just kind of gotten hidden at 11:30 like consistently. Vanderbilt was always there.
Sure.
Now it's like that 4 o'clock game that is opposite of the CBS game. That's where they hide Vanderbilt now.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. And yeah, I don't know what I expected, coming into the year for Vandy, but I've been a little disappointed. I think
I expected competitiveness.
Yeah, they. I think you've made the joke, or we've made the joke on here in prior weeks, and it's everybody makes the joke on Twitter, right? But the whole program is still under construction, just like the stadium. So,
what I don't understand is in the age of the transfer portal, you can't go out and find a junior to transfer to Vanderbilt with that degree. That if you're not going to play in the NFL, if you could transfer to Vanderbilt, play for 1 year, and get that degree, it feels like they should be able to make some bones doing that.
Sure. Grad transfers too, right? Go get a graduate degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Vanderbilt sheepskin's worth something.
No doubt. If I could have gotten into Vanderbilt, I probably would have gone.
Mm-hmm. I think we all would have.
Right.
Even though it's $100,000 a year or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about our future SEC brothers at Red River with Sankey in attendance? Do you have any feel or thought on that game?
I think that right now the Big 12 is in cold sweats waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning, because there's a good chance the Big 12 championship game is going to be a second SEC championship game.
Yes. I think the only hope the Big 12 has at this point that the Big 12 title is not a rematch of the Red River game this Saturday is if Kansas State figures out a way to get in there, because the rest of the conference looks pretty, I guess, well, West Virginia has looked good, but let's be real, Mountaineer fans, y'all are not going to make it to the Big 12 title. So I'm with you. I think what's his name, your Mark, who's made enough comments about how much he hates OU and Texas for leaving. He has got to be on his hands and knees praying that somebody else can rise up and not let Texas and OU in their final season play for the conference title game.
Yeah, because that would be the greatest mic drop in the history of mic drops by Oklahoma or Texas, both of them. Just like, hey, all right, y'all have fun with basketball season, and we're going to dominate baseball just like we always do.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, thank you, Hammer, for stopping by. Thanks everybody for watching. This program is on the SEC After Dark YouTube channel. Give that a subscribe if you would. Give me a subscribe at Locked On Ole Miss. Give the Biscuits and SEC newsletter a subscribe as well. Do all of that stuff, and everybody enjoy this weekend of college football. We are pretty much halfway through the season, and that is so sad. So, Hammer, thank you, bud.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. That's scary, but thanks for having us. It's we'll soak it in. We'll enjoy the games every weekend.
That's right. All right, take care, bud.